So when we're talking about imposter syndrome, I think it's really important to start with a very broad definition. And that very broad definition is it's low self-esteem, low self-confidence. And normally it plays out in situations. So it's situational, right? It has to do with you feeling like you're not capable, like you can't rise to the occasion in any situation. So it could be at work, it could be in a relationship, it could be, oh my goodness, and taking your driver's exam. It could be just about anything, but it's situational. So you may be feeling, wow, I could accomplish anything on one particular task, but then when it comes to this specific thing, like finding a job, all of a sudden you think you can't do it. And it's not just about low self-esteem or low self-confidence. Like we can break that down. Anytime you're talking about those things, you can break that down. What exactly are you afraid of, right? Because when you have low self-confidence, there's a fear factor going on. So what are you afraid of when you have imposter syndrome? So this is what's crazy weird about this particular thing. You can be afraid of many different things. This is sort of an umbrella for low self-esteem. And one of the main ones, I think when I talk a lot or talk to a lot of people, one of the main ones is fear of failure. And this is what is so crazy to me because you can break that one down too. So what is failure? Failure is basically you judging yourself and telling yourself that you are a failure. It's a judgment. Instead of recognizing that in any situation where you are going for something, you're either going to get the results that you want or you're going to get an opportunity to learn. Instead, you decide that you're going to label yourself through judgment as a failure. And a failure judgment is a dead stop. I mean, that's like, bam, you're done. You failed. So there is no succeeding after that. You can reframe your thoughts and start all over again. But once you've labeled yourself a failure, you're done. That's it. You don't move forward. So when you have a fear of failure and you are not moving forward, you're basically designing the end of whatever it was you were trying to accomplish. Because we are creatures who like to prove ourselves right, you're going to put yourself in a position of failing. Man, right? You set yourself up for failure because you're afraid of failing. Deep, right? So there's a flip side to this because sometimes imposter syndrome has to do with a fear of success. And how does that play out? Basically, you're afraid of succeeding because then you're going to have to reprove that you can do something over and over and over again. And you may be thinking, I got that right because it was a fluke. Like I didn't know that I could do that and I just did it. But that doesn't mean I can do it again. And so you set yourself up for failure one more time. Yikes, right? Instead of having a positive attitude, instead of coming out and saying, well, I've not done this before, but I'm very confident that I can accomplish it. Instead of coming out and saying these things, or at least saying them to yourself, you set yourself up for failure by deciding there is a failure and a dead stop that is going to be happening. Not super good thing. Another fear that comes up under imposter syndrome is a fear of looking like a fool. And that's where you've got all the confidence in the world and you jump in and then you don't get it right. You get a lot of opportunity to learn in that situation, but maybe you didn't want to learn at the expense of like listening to everybody else's laughter or the comments that come up afterwards, right? Like feeling like a fool isn't comfortable. It doesn't feel good. And so when you set yourself up by feeling afraid of that, you're basically setting yourself up for catastrophe if it doesn't go right. Do you see sort of a theme going on here? Basically, your mindset helps you get to whatever it is that your mindset is all about. So if you're thinking that you're going to fail, chances are you're going to fail. If you think that you're going to succeed, you leave opening for learning and succeeding. That doesn't mean that you always get it right. You may still not get it right. But when you're facing it with a more positive attitude, the chances of you gaining something from that situation are much greater. So another thing, and this is something that a lot of women, and forgive me for stating it this way, but it tends to be primarily women. They have a fear of a lack of knowledge. And I've had a lot of clients, a lot of female clients who come through and say, I've got to get this new certificate. I've got to go take that new class. I need to make sure that I'm in on this or I'm in on that because I need to make sure that I am qualified. I'm not going to get this position or that position unless I have all of these certifications. Now, I'm not against education. I think education is fabulous and extremely useful, and definitely in many situations it is vital. However, when you have imposter syndrome and it drives you to want more and more and more and more education so that you are not lacking knowledge, you're spending a whole lot of time educating in classroom situations instead of learning on the job. And most of the time when you're affected by imposter syndrome, you're actually stopping yourself from going for an opportunity because you think, I've never gone to a class for that. And this is something that's very different between most men and women. At least this is what I have experienced. And that is that women will have a tendency to be very honest about what they're educated in. And that many times will stifle them. Whereas men will go, I can do that. I can do that. Even if they don't have the education. So this is what I recommend. See your possibilities. See what you could be capable of. See what you could do if you put your mind to it and you had a positive attitude. And then say, I can do that. Most of the jobs that I have gotten and positions where I'm a supervisor that I have gotten have been because I said, I can do that. Because I knew what I was capable of, not because I had gone to 4 years at a university for this particular thing or taken a course or gotten a certification. You know, there are certain industries where those things are vital and you have to get those certifications. But most of the time, if you've been introduced to a specific thing and you're being offered a job to do that specific thing, with just a little bit of on-the-job training and maybe a small little course here and there, you can do it. But you've got to get in the door so that you can prove that you can do it. So when you're feeling unworthy, when you're feeling like you got this job but you don't really deserve it, or you got this position but it's really not something that you earned, that also can be stifling, and that is under the umbrella of imposter syndrome as well, because you do have the ability, you can get through it, but you're telling yourself that you're not worthy, and so you're slamming the door in your own face. Wow. Wow, right? Crazy. And of course, all of these things, all of these descriptions are generalities, because we all experience things on different levels for different reasons. And some of us experience many of these things. I can say that I've experienced at least 2 or 3 of those at times in my life. And I can also say that I've realized that some of them are completely useless. So let's just be done with it. And that's what I recommend to you. Really look at some of these ways that imposter syndrome is working in your life and take a step back. Look at it. Is it stifling you or helping you to move forward? And why do you have such low self-confidence in these areas? Step back, look at it, analyze it, figure it out. So when we talk about chocolate today, we're talking about Monster Roth chocolatiers. And these candy bars, it's funny because it's like in a box, and when you open it up, there are tiny little candy bars inside of it. And so it's like a little surprise when you open it up. But the one we're going to talk about is the chili dark chocolate. And we're going to talk about that because it is definitely not an imposter. It is a chocolate that is unapologetic. It says, I'm here. and I deserve to be recognized and acknowledged. And so it steps forward and it says, yum, right? You're going to love me. And of course you try it and you do. And even though it's got chili powder in it, it's just the right amount of kick. But here's the thing. And this might be the imposter syndrome section of this. This is one of those chocolates that when I picked it up, even though it didn't include a lot of the things that I try to avoid in chocolates, it also gave a little statement saying that it could contain dairy, it could contain nuts. And so if you're somebody who's very sensitive to those things, obviously you can't have this chocolate. But it looked so pure on the label that when I turned it over, I was shocked to find out that more was going on. So when you're working on getting over imposter syndrome, what are you working on? Self-confidence. You got to get that little chili kick in on there. You've got to be authentic, even if you've got a few questions on the inside. So can imposter syndrome be good? That's a good question. Imposter syndrome maybe gives you the opportunity to sort of assess what's going on with you. So maybe in some ways it could be good because it opens up understandings of who you are and what you're all about. Possible. I would say overall, it's not super helpful if you want to progress in life. If you're looking for fulfillment, probably not super helpful. Because if you've always got a question on the inside, chances are it's stifling you on many different levels. So I would say overall, not super good. Can it be diagnosed? Technically, I don't think that it's an actual mental health diagnosis. It's something that you might recognize. It's something that a therapist might say, you might wonder about imposter syndrome because you look very capable to me. You sound very capable, and yet you don't believe that you are. But it's not necessarily something you can diagnose. It's an understanding that your vision of who you are and what you are is affecting your outcome. Can it affect your body and what's going on with your physical self? Absolutely. It fills you with stress. When you constantly feel as though you don't belong somewhere because you're not worthy or you're not qualified, you are stressed out. What if somebody figures it out? That's something that people question a lot. What if they figure it out? What if they realize I'm not as good as they thought I was? Wow, not good for you. Stress, not good for your muscles, for your heart, for your digestion, for your brain. And you've got that whole, circular thought thing going on where you're constantly recycling through everything that is going wrong in your life. Man, if you mix that with imposter syndrome, not super great for you. So how do you overcome it? We're talking a lot about what it is and how it plays out in your life, but how do you overcome it? Well, the main thing is you need to start recognizing what is real and what is a belief. When you start recognizing that you really are capable, when you start recognizing that you do have an appropriate amount of education, when you start recognizing that when people laugh because you haven't gotten it right, that isn't your problem. That's their problem. In fact, most of the people who react that way towards you, they react that way because they themselves doubt whether or not they are capable. They're showing you their lack of self-esteem. People who hurt are hurt themselves. So pity them. Give them a little extra compassion. Don't allow it to rain down on your parade. Don't allow that. Allow yourself to progress and move forward. So one of the things that people do is go to group therapy. And that can be very, very helpful because you're in a group and you're speaking to many different people. Sometimes getting your thoughts out and speaking them into a crowd can help you to really look at how valid those thoughts are. You might recognize it. My goodness, I was terrified of public speaking, but it's not that hard. And realize that if there's somebody in the room that makes fun of you or has a problem with what it is that you're saying, again, it's their problem. It's not your problem. And being in a group and speaking in front of a group can give you that understanding. Another thing is just going straight to therapy, just being one-on-one with somebody, going to a life coach, figuring out your life and how to live a more fulfilling life by lifting yourself up. You can do cognitive processing therapy, which is where you identify your negative thoughts, because sometimes people don't even realize the dialogue that's going on inside their own brain. Sometimes people they're constant, like all day long, they're saying to themselves, you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not educated enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not strong enough, you're not devoted enough, like all day long. And you're with yourself 24/7. So to hear that all day long can be very stifling. You should be your own best friend, your own superhero, your biggest cheerleader. That's your job. If you're wondering, what is my job in life? What is my mission? What should I be doing? Your mission should be to fill your life and your thoughts with positive words, because then you can be more fulfilled and you can affect the lives of others in a more positive and uplifting way. So this whole imposter syndrome thing, gotta let it go. Let's get back into reality of what's actually going on. Let's look deeper at what failure actually is. Let's look more at the opportunity that is in front of you and how you can grab onto that opportunity and really fly. Because imposter syndrome holds you back. It's stifling. Its only purpose is to stop you in your tracks so that you don't succeed. Whoa, right? That's not something we want in our lives. We don't need it. We don't want it. So right now, today, start listening to what is going on in your brain. Start listening to the words that you're using when you're talking to yourself. Start saying to yourself, I can do that. Now, if somebody says, I need a neurosurgeon, can you come do this surgery? Obviously, if you're not educated in that, that's not what I'm talking about. But if it's, hey, we need somebody to help paint this swing set, I can do that. We need somebody who can learn this computer system and train other people. I can do that, right? There are things that you can do. Allow yourself to see that and allow yourself to say, I can do that, and work beyond imposter syndrome.